Sit in a comfortable, relaxed position. Allow your eyelids to close. Observe and let go of any urge to become, improve, fix, or change anything. This is what I was talking about earlier with the practices, letting go. Right? Observe and let go of any urge to become, improve, fix, or change anything. Just be here now in the stillness of being. A neti inquiry begins with the first three questions you can silently ask yourself in the stillness of being. Do not merely think about the questions, experience them. Allow all experiences and appearances that arise to come, take form, dissolve, and go, like clouds floating in the clear sky of unchanging being. So there are three steps to this process of meditation practice. A, inquire. B, wait without waiting. And C, observe and experience what arises. The questions are to be asked in order, presented separately and experientially. Stay with the question asked until the answer shifts from being something you understand as information to that which you are, that is unchanging at the level of being. In other words, stay with each question in being meditation until the answer is so crystal clear at the level of being that the answer is unchanging regardless of any inner and outer circumstances. And here are the questions. 1, am I aware? This first question is the fundamental and key question. Do not move on until it is absolutely clear that the answer, spoiler alert, is yes. At the experiential level of being, your clarity might happen quickly or take some time. Test it out throughout the day or days and throughout the changing circumstances until it is clear that you are aware presence itself and that you are the ever-present, infinite, formless, open space in which all forms, all appearances arise, manifest, and dissolve. Do you recall recently that I suggested that you do this checking thing, right? This is what he's talking about here, you know. Keep checking during the day. Is the awareness still here, right? Like that. Knowing the answer is irrelevant. Being the answer is everything. Question 2. So the first question is, am I aware, right? And you stay with that question until the question is answered clearly, experientially, right? And you may be staying with that question for a while. You may be practicing with that question for a while, you know? Because as I have said here, until that gets answered, you can't proceed. Until you've seen awareness, you can't proceed. Because how can you check to see if it's there if you don't know what it is? You first have to recognize awareness. So that's the first thing, am I aware? And then the next one, what am I? Be with this question and observe all the conditioned programming, inherited and indoctrinated beliefs, ideals, and false identities that you have called I and me arise that have been misidentified and put in place over years, generations, and eons. Observe also that you are the ever-present one that knows these ever-changing, morphing, impermanent identities, and that no matter how many of these not I's arise, the one thing that is unchanging is that you are. And then the third thing. Hold it. Then the third thing, and he says the third thing here is to be announced, so he hasn't named it yet. Right? Once you have stabilized your true nature, utilizing the first two questions, the third question will be offered as a way to illuminate, purify, and dissolve the remaining false identities and universal beliefs that are at the heart of the conflict-ridden, duality-based birth, death, survival worldview. I invite you to allow the neti inquiry to assist in taking you home to your true unchanging nature, your core wisdom, and experience living as a creative, unfolding work of art. So that was his newsletter. Right? And that's really not different from what I've been saying here all along, right? That you have to first recognize the truth, recognize your true nature, right? And when I say that, I don't mean recognize your true nature like an academic subject, like information. The information about what you are makes no difference. Yeah? You probably noticed that. The information, you can read all the books you want from a self-help store or a meditation store or a spiritual store, and that won't make any difference, right? The difference begins to be made when you see the truth directly. This is a direct way of experiencing the truth. By looking at it, am I aware? And then looking to see what the answer is and staying with the question until the answer is clear and you're being the answer. Not that you know the answer, you're being the answer. That's the key. You're being the answer, right? And then once that's occurred, then you can go on to the next question, and ask, what am I? Now that I have made contact with this state of being, the awareness that is my true nature, what is this awareness? What am I, right? And then you can go through a process to address answering that question. So, the other thing that I wanted to share comes from the Substack from Joan Tollifson. And I want you to connect these two things together, right? Because he said there that the point of the awake state, the point of self-realization, is that the circumstances, right, and the situations that will occur in your life that are beyond your control, right, stop being the source of your well-being. The source of your well-being is what you are, not what's happening. And so to tie the thing together, Joan Tollifson, who's been a spiritual teacher for decades and decades, highly recognized, written a lot of books, right? Puts out a lot of stuff on the internet. And she writes about her life, and she's talking here in this newsletter. And she says that she, in recent weeks, has experienced a most severe flare-up in a long time of the finger-biting compulsion that I have had since childhood. I bite the skin, sometimes quite severely, never the nails. This is called dermatopragia, I think. My fingers are bandaged as I type. So here you have a spiritual teacher who's saying that she can't stop biting her fingers, and it is a severe condition in which she has to have her fingers bandaged. So you may say, how could it be? If she's enlightened, if she's self-realized, wouldn't that mean that she would be able to have the power, right, not to do that, right? Because you can define the word power as being able to produce an intended result. That's what power is, right? So shouldn't she have the power, not to do that? I'd love to be free of this compulsion, and when it falls away, as it sometimes does for weeks or months at a time, it is a delightful relief. But so far, it always comes back. I've quit alcohol drinking, heavy cigarette smoking, but this compulsion is far from tenacious. I used to feel shame about it. I took it personally as a sign of how unenlightened and hopelessly fucked up I am. She said that, not me. But thankfully, that storyline has disappeared in the realization that life is a choiceless, impersonal happening like the weather. You get this? Life is an impersonal, choiceless happening like the weather. If this compulsion shows up, off, and on for the rest of my life, I'm at peace with that. And I'm grateful for having had this compulsion. It has taught me some of the most valuable lessons and given me compassion for those whose compulsions are much more terrible. Now, can you see when we've talked here about these famous religious leaders, right, who got in trouble for sexuality, who got in trouble for drinking, like your teacher, right? If you apply this to those people, do you understand? It doesn't matter. Because you're awake and enlightened and self-realized, it doesn't mean that you won't have bad habits. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you won't get cancer. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you will be able not to suffer when those things occur. That's what it means. I can't tell you how many times friends and readers of my books have offered explanations and cures for this compulsion, because they're still in a personality condition, you see. And believe me, I've tried just about everything you can imagine. I've worked on it with a succession of therapists, acupuncturists, and somatic workers, along with several spiritual teachers. And it has indeed gotten much better, but it happens less frequently, disappears more often, and the wounds are significantly less severe than they once were. But still it flares up and is often completely uncontrollable. We love to try to explain things and find cures, all of which has its place. But spiritual liberation points to the possibility of not needing a cure or an explanation, simply being awake as the unvarnished, bare actuality of just this, exactly as it is, rough edges and all. This, in fact, is all we ever really have, present experiencing, the immovable here now, this awareing presence just as it is, which is always right here, right now, and yet never the same way for even an instant. No one is ever actually separate from this. No one is in control of it. There are apparent choices and what sometimes feels like having or not having control, but all of this is arising choicelessly. We cannot decide to do anything other than exactly what we are doing or not doing in each moment. The apparent thinker, decider who seems to be steering the ship is a mirage. This can sound frightening, but in truly grokking it, it is immensely freeing. Cause and effect, time and space, self and world are all abstract conceptual overlays on an ever-present immediacy that cannot actually be divided up or pulled apart. There is infinite variety here, but if we look closely enough, no actual boundaries and no separate and persisting things can ever be found. In the conceptual picture of cause and effect, it certainly appears that people make things happen. We can seemingly control some things, such as opening and closing our hand, but not other things, such as the functioning of our spleen. These relative differences cannot be denied. We are conditioned to believe in free will and in our responsibility to accomplish great things, be a good person, do our duty, and so on. We habitually judge ourselves and others, compare ourselves to others, and think that we and others should be better, stronger, smarter, wiser, more compassionate, more successful, more attractive, and something more than we are. But we don't actually get to choose the role we are playing in the movie of waking life. No one can simply decide to be Martin Luther King or Ramana Maharshi, or not to be Adolf Hitler or Pol Pot, if that is the part we've been given. Even if we seemingly choose to change such things as our names, gender, career, hairstyle, religious affiliation, or anything else, each of these choices is a choiceless movement of life itself. Every apparent individual is the result of infinite causes and conditions. The whole universe is moving as each one of us and as everything that happens, and no form ever actually persists for more than an instant. You are not the same as you were when you began reading this article. The whole universe has shifted. It may seem that you are choosing to read this right now, but if you look closely as choices seem to happen, it may be discovered that there is no one calling the shots. Thoughts arise unbidden and suggest actions or claim authorship. I must do this. I should do this. I shouldn't do this. I will do this. I will stop doing this. I did this. I could have done something else, or you did this and you should have done better. But when we look for this apparent captain of the ship, what do we find? As someone once said, the self is like a clenched fist. Open it and there's nothing there. Can you see that what she's saying here is exactly the same teaching as you get from all the other sources? You hear the same things being said over and over again, right? The same things.
You said it. There's only one truth.
Yeah.
They are going to keep pointing to the same thing.
There's only one truth, but there is a unlimited number of lies. Right? Because as we live our life, that's what we encounter all the time. Conceptual reality. That's what we encounter, the divided world. You and me, you against the world. Everybody's separate. This is the reality that everybody's involved with. And what the pointings are pointing to is the fact that that is all a function of a mirage. All of that comes from identifying yourself as a separate self. All of that comes from identifying yourself as a physical body. I understand that to wake up from this dream, I understand that to realize your true nature, which is not a physical body and not a personality, right, is a very challenging process. And that's why I keep harping on the fact that you've got to practice meditation every single day. It's not going to happen to us typical people all at once like it did to some of the famous spiritual teachers. It's going to happen to us gradually. And the more you understand about it, the more you can hear what these people are saying, the more you can see what they're pointing at, right, the faster the process will go. Because when you're sitting in meditation, that's why I keep telling you, when you're sitting in meditation, refine your practice. Refine your practice. Keep eliminating the tension. Keep eliminating the contractions. Keep eliminating the effort to meditate. Keep eliminating the idea that if you try hard enough, you're going to succeed. That's not true about meditation. It's not true about life either. The personality is a more different and better operation, isn't it? Yeah, more different and better. That's the way the personality lives life. Right? It will not produce the peace, satisfaction, and well-being that we really want. It will never produce that. That's something that you have to really get clear about so that you stop involving yourself with a failed process. If you keep doing what doesn't work, you'll keep getting the same result. That's so obvious, right? And if you start practicing what does work, you'll start to experience well-being. Well-being has to include spiritual and psychological and emotional well-being, mental health, emotional health, not just physical well-being. That's not going to solve anything. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's a false solution. It's not a true solution. And death is not, and the death that we're speaking of here is not just the death of the physical body. The death that we're speaking of here is a death that you can experience at any time. You can experience the death of the personality at any time, and all you have to do to experience the death of the personality is realize that it doesn't exist. If you really get that, if you really experientially realize that the personality is a mirage, it doesn't exist, that's a death. That's a death. That's the only real death. And if that death occurs for you, the death of the body will be an event, not an end. If that death occurs for you, the death of the body will be a conclusion to a life, not an end. Isn't it true that that's what you really want? Is freedom? You know, freedom from death, freedom from suffering, you know, freedom from believing in things that will never produce what you want. You know, people pray and hope. You hope and pray, right? People hope and pray, right? But they don't realize that your prayers are always answered. You just don't like the answers, right? Your prayers are always answered. If you pray for something and it doesn't happen, your prayer was answered. Right? But that's not how people look at prayer, right? If they pray for something they don't get what they want, they think the prayer wasn't answered. Right?
Foxhole prayers.
Mm-hmm. Or hoping, wasting your energy hoping. I don't even know what hoping is. Nobody can tell me, you know? What does it mean to hope? What does the activity of hoping mean?
Is that what bunnies do?
No, that's what hopping.
Well, if I don't know what hoping means, and there's no definition, it could be nothing.
Yeah. People hope and pray, don't they? Yeah. And so one of the things that you can get from practicing meditation and learning about these teachings is you can stop wasting your energy on hoping and praying and start allowing yourself to experience that everything is given. Isn't that what they say in the spiritual teachings? Everything is given. You're already home. Your relationship with God is complete. There's no need to do anything to experience God. You and God are the same thing. You know, I was telling somebody earlier about that I was at a drum circle last week, and somebody, my friend that runs the drum circle was talking about how we are all God, you know. And after the drum circle, 2 people came up and attacked him. Not physically, but verbally attacked him, saying that's blasphemous. But isn't it the truth that the Bible said that Jesus Christ on the cross said, "My Father and I are one"? It's right there. It's right there. So these people obviously aren't studying their own teaching, right? Because it's right there. But it's understandable that people would be confused, and it's understandable that people will think that God and them are separate. Why? Because your orientation is to be a separate self. And if you're a separate self, you're separate from other people, you're separate from life, you're separate from the world, and you're separate from God. And that's what you have to deal with. Meditation and these teachings offer you the opportunity to end that process and just relax. Just relax. You're already home. Everything's taken care of. You have nothing to say about anything. And the only thing that you can practice that will make all the difference in the world is to relax and allow yourself to experience what your true nature is. And if you succeed at that, the circumstances won't matter. It won't matter whether you're rich or poor. It won't matter whether you're old or young. It won't matter whether you're healthy or sick. None of that will matter anymore, you know, because you can be present to anything and experience that you're the space for it. You're the space for it. You're not an object in the space, you are the space. That's what awareness is. It's a space. It's like a space.